Hello, I'm Steve. A little about myself. I'm a retired law enforcement officer with 20 years of service. I began my career in the jail, worked the road, and became an investigator. During my career, my training consisted of everything from SWAT to becoming a state certified crime scene technician. I've investigated crimes from thefts to homicides. After retiring and becoming aware of true crime and web sleuths, I started my channel for web sleuths to better understand the perspectives of law enforcement. Not only do we cover true crime, I go out into the field and assist families who have lost loved ones to homicide and their cases are considered cold. Join me as we look and bring attention to these critical cases. Hello, everyone. Glad you're able to join us tonight. Thank you for being here. And if you're new to the channel, absolutely appreciate you being here. And remember, during our chat, while you're in chat, be respectful of families, of the mods, and each other. And as we have this short presentation, and tonight we're going to have a presentation and also a little video I made today of some time trials regarding some of the timeline around the Kohberger moments that from the time his phone went dead to the time, or he went off the air, until the time that he came back on. And we're going to be running some trials this week on some other crime scene reconstruction. And Mrs. Steve's going to be helping me on that. But we've just wanted everybody to be mindful of in chat, and we'll get started. And while chat's going on, of course, if you have a question about any of the presentations, absolutely let us know, and we'll answer those after the presentation and after the video. Okay, if you have any information regarding this case of the homicides of Madison, Kaylee, Ethan, and Zana, absolutely make sure law enforcement has it to ensure that justice is found for them. Of course, Kohberger is the accused, and as the trial moves forward, law enforcement is going to need all the information that's out there. And if you have something, right now there's videos popping up, pretty consistent in the last week of new release vehicles matching Kohberger's vehicle, and is that his vehicle or not? And of course, a lot of debates going on YouTube. Is it or is it not? Time frame and stuff. But with that information, if you do have something that is on some of your cameras or something, absolutely make sure law enforcement has that. All right. With that being said, of course, we're talking about this individual here of Kohberger, and there's, as we look at some of the more recent videos that are coming up of vehicles driving around, to start with, we have a very narrow window of opportunity of when the crimes occurred, as what law enforcement, through their court docs of probable cause affidavits, that they have a narrow window of exactly when these crimes occurred due to the social media and DoorDash and certain other videos and recordings that law enforcement has. And so they narrowed this window of that these homicides occurred between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. 25-minute window of opportunity. And with some of the new videos out, that's even narrower. We're taking off a few minutes. And so when we add on that the defense attorneys have said that there was no DNA within his vehicle from the crime scene, and that sparks a few questions of how could someone commit 4 homicides using a edged weapon and create so much blood transfers, because it would be. Anytime anyone has a violent encounter with edged weapons, there is transfer stains, there's blood spatter, there's arterial spurts. It depends on the injuries. There's defensive wounds, and all these injuries, of course, will allow blood transfers to occur between both the victims and the offender. And when it's on the offender and then he goes and gets into a vehicle to escape and leave the scene, then of course you would expect that there would be a transfer of someone's DNA from the crime scene into his vehicle. And if we are to believe the defense, that did not occur. And so we're looking at how could that not occur, and what preparations, and what could someone that was trying to cloak their presence at the scene, what steps would they have to take to ensure that that transfer, although it might have occurred, but by the time law enforcement processes that vehicle, the DNA profiles and any other type of evidence from hair to other items that might have been transferred would not be present in the vehicle. And we're going to be taking it in different steps. And the first step I was looking at is that if Kohberger is the offender, and regardless of who the offender is, even if it was someone else, that certain steps, if they were in that vehicle of Kohberger's, and how could they be able to not transfer the evidence from the crime scene? And I believe that there was evidence transferred from the crime scene, but it might have been shedded and removed from him by layers. And that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at, especially tonight. But as you can see here, this is from the probable cause affidavit on Kohberger, and I broke it down into several different parts. Of course, we have on November 13th, 2022, at approximately 2:42 a.m., Kohberger's phone, the 8458, was being used, and at around that time period, it quit. And so with it going off the air, and it did not come back on until 4:48. So we have a time span there of when this phone was off. So we're going to look at originally the 2:42 time frame when that phone went off. What was Kohberger doing, and why was it then taken off of the air? And what steps was he making between 2:42 and 4 a.m.? That's an hour and 18 minutes. And I believe that during this time frame, he was prepping his vehicle. Of course, we have people that says the shower curtain could be used. Absolutely, that's one thing. And we're going to be, when we get to the vehicle part of this, which will not be tonight, but when we get to the vehicle preparation thing, some of that, of course, I'm probably going to be a little bit strict on what I release of prepping a vehicle. But as far as what Kohberger could have done about layering up is not that really big of an issue. And you'll be able to see, and I did this for the fact that a lot of people already expect that's what was done. And I tend to agree that layering clothing and certain articles would minimize any type of DNA transfer from Kohberger to the victims. And also, if he was able to remove those layers prior to getting in his vehicle, then that would minimize the amount of transfer. But from in an hour and 18 minutes, what all could you do? And we have to subtract certain times. Some of the more recent videos show that there's a vehicle similar to Kohberger's driving around in the neighborhood at 4:05, 4:06. And so that narrows it down to, we're no longer talking about a 25-minute time frame of him to be able to park and then travel, walk to, gain entry, go in, have an encounter, and commit these homicides, and then be able to leave. And at what point did he start removing some of those layers and start taking steps to conceal and control what type of cross-contamination that could occur? And that's what this whole series that we're going to be doing is talking about. And so some of the things is this simple rain suit, gloves, mask, and plastic bags that I use just for this one scenario. And Mrs. Steve went out and took some pictures of me today, so that we'll be able to look at this and see how quick someone could dress out, because the time taken for him to dress out, and it's important to realize that an offender, and I've seen it with bank robbers, and I don't think I've ever had it with a homicide where someone uh, planned and premeditated uh, to limit transfer, as what possibly occurred in this case. But in bank robberies, absolutely, I've seen it. Whereas the offender, when they leave their home, they're wearing certain clothing. And when they return home, they're wearing that same clothing. But they'll go to a safe area and either layer up, or they will exchange clothing, so that when they're at the bank or wherever they're going to commit the crime, that they're in different clothing. And then and they'll reverse the process. And in law enforcement, back in the day, we called this a safe staging area, safe ground, that when a criminal is on the way to commit his crime, that's where he stops at. And it doesn't have to be that it's anything elaborate. It doesn't have to be a motel room. It doesn't have to be, it can be something or some area that is, you know, relatively off the grid, whereas they can go and they feel safe and confident in that area, that there's no one there. It's someplace that they can see a large area. They can see people coming and going. And so that they're able to have some comfort as they change clothing or layer up. And then they'll go right back to that same area after the crime and reverse engineer and reverse everything and do right the opposite. That then they'll get back into what their previous clothing was, or they remove the layers, clean up, whatever they have to do. And within this time frame that we're looking at, because we have an hour and 18 minutes prior to him showing up in the area, of what was he doing during that hour and 18 minutes from the time the phones quit sending out and possibly going off the air. And so we have to look at that. And so anyway, with this done, that once I'm dressed up, this is the image of me. Of course, there's not a lot you can tell about my physical stature, and even a close up. I don't know how many of you could recognize me. Mrs. Steve said that she wouldn't be able to recognize me from just this, but now she would if I.
Well, you can't even see your eyebrows.
I know it, and that's just was what he was wearing that night. Of course, his bushy eyebrows were able to be seen. What I chose to wear and the way that I pulled it tight, I did everything to minimize everything from hair control, losing hair, limiting the amount of skin exposure. And you'll see in the video when we get to that exactly how long it took for me to get into this, and then how long it took me to reverse and get out of this, uh, and get whereas I could get back into a vehicle, and if there was any contaminated clothing that would allow for cross contamination, it would be minimal,
Minimal.
minimal. And
And Dave wants to know if you were that to the Waffle House.
no, I did not wear that to the Waffle House.
Thank goodness.
Yes, and but I will be wearing this tomorrow and the next day when Mrs. Steve and I get into some of the physical contacts and blood spatter analysis, because I want to see with this layer clothing how effective it is when we introduce the synthetic blood into the scene and into the interaction of Mrs. Steve being a victim and me being the
Excuse me?
yes.
I'm the victim?
Yes, and I'm the attacker, the predator, and
So this is date night?
this is date night, and
Y'all remember that. This is date night tomorrow night.
yes, and so as we do this testing, because I want to see, because I'll put a Tyvek suit under this and it's solid white. And I'll dress out under it, and we'll stain this up with synthetic blood as much as possible, from cast off to contacts to transfers, and we'll see what type of transfers and see how effective this is. That when I remove this, if it does leak through, then of course it will be on the Tyvek suit.
Get your dog ready, Mrs. Steve.
Yes, but anyway, with that being said,
Thanks, Joanne.
we'll go back to the video. What did Molly say?
Oh, Molly, that's a good one. Mrs. Steve, he'll owe you more plastic flowers after date night.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, that is the truth.
It is. It is. All right. So we'll remove.
What we're gonna do?
Remove the slideshow.
Remove us.
No. Just
No.
kill the cam.
Excuse me.
I'll do it. All right.
My cam is down.
Okay.
So that's you.
Yep. So I'm gonna stop our cam.
Okay.
And then I'm going to go to this one. Okay. As I'll narrate through it as we go. I went and parked in an area and just simply started dressing. And you can look at the time frames of this as I dress. It doesn't take a lot of time. You just take your shoes off, of course, to put on this suit, and get your shoes back on real quick. And so the first layer with this type of clothing is extremely quick and easy to get on. And the zip and the locking system on this particular item, of course, is it has the zipper and then buttons. Snaps. Okay. Just different.
Snaps.
It snaps. Sorry. But anyway, but as I dress out, and there was a learning curve to this. Of course, this was the learning curve was that I tried to first put on gloves prior to, and as I was putting this on, I realized certain things about why the knife sheath might not have been worn by the offender. And I wouldn't have realized that until I put this on. Here I put the mask on first, and then I do my head covering, for the fact that when I had a holster on at one point, and as I was trying to put on the pants, the holster got in the way. And I said, well, that might be one reason why Kohberger chose not to wear the knife sheath and may have carried it in hand for the fact of the interference. Don't know if that's the case or not. And the longest thing it took me to put on, of course, is layering up these gloves. It probably took me, if you're just putting on one layer of gloves right now, you're done, you're ready to go. But I put on multiple layers, and I did that for a reason, that whenever I disrobe, I do that in layers, that when I touch the item, then I go and change, pull off gloves, and I have multiple layers so that I won't cross-contaminate anything of my lower or inner garb or the vehicle as I proceed with the next level of testing that we do tomorrow and next day. Okay. All right. I'm still putting on the gloves, getting everything. And but there were several things here I found interesting about how long it took, and it really not that long. So now, and it is important to realize that something like this would have had to occur, because I do not think that with the dark clothing that he was described wearing, and I do think that this was one of the measures he would have took. And 3 minutes, that's basically what it took. I think it was just over 3 minutes from the time that I get everything on, 3 layers of gloves, And he could have had another layer of gloves over this. They make tactical gloves. They make certain types of gloves, whereas you can't. So I'm there, and then I look and I see some skin around my wrist, and so I just retighten the cuffs. And then once those are tightened, it's pretty well. I feel extremely well covered, and it's hot. Let me tell you. But now this is where I come back into screen, and this would be post crime. I'm taking off my shoes. I'm about to disrobe, and as I disrobe, and I'm in no rush. You can see that I'm not. I probably could take another 20 or 30 seconds off of this. Um, uh, and I hesitate every now and then trying to add on a little bit of time, but I could cut out, probably 20 or 30 seconds on the disrobe. And if I didn't put multiple layers of gloves on, I could put even more layer time off of the dress out. So in total, you're probably only looking at dress out and disrobing, less than 7 minutes total. And But I wanted to figure out that if he did disrobe, how would he control the amount of cross contamination? And simply just putting it into a trash bag as you disrobe is a simple process. And
Sorry.
oh, okay.
Multitasking.
Multitasking. But then, as you can see here, like I said, you just throw everything in the bag and you're done and you're out of there. And so totally dressing out and totally undressing back out to get where I'm back to my lower or inner clothing is not that difficult and not that hard. And let me start my cam again. And then we'll go back to the Kohberger and from 247 and then but like I said, it's important to realize that at the 247 and that hour and 13 minutes, what could he have been doing? And I don't think the whole time that he was dressing himself. I think that was probably one of the last things that he did. But I do think that he prepped that vehicle, very similar to what he did to himself, um, to prep himself. That once he left that vehicle, that there's certain steps that he took to the interior of that vehicle. And I've looked at a lot of items, and from my training and where I know that I found DNA, where I know I found fingerprints and hair and fiber, and doing lifts in vehicles, both tape lifts and vacuum lifts. I know what parts of the vehicle that will be processed, and I understand how they could be protected, and from anyone occupying that vehicle. And I'm going to go out and I'm going to time how long it takes me to dress out a vehicle, um, and what measures would be taken for that. And I'll have all the items assembled. Of course, I won't be sharing all those items because there are some of those that I really don't want out there. And but because I don't want to be a training video for bad guys. But with that being said, do we have any questions or anything?
Yes, you do. Let's see here. All right, we're going to start with some blue lights.
Oh, okay.
Here we go for Joanne Jackson. Can you read it?
Thank you, Steve and Mrs. Steve, for everything you do for us to understand. Absolutely. Like I said, whenever I'm looking at these scenes and looking at these crimes, when I see something that is confusing from the crime scene perspective of law enforcement, it absolutely just aggravates me to death. And when I saw the defense come in with that statement that there was no DNA from the victims in his vehicle, and doesn't mean that's so, it's just that it hasn't been found at this time. Now, it may be found in the future. We just don't know it currently.
light.
You guys rock. Absolutely love Steve's laugh. Keep up the great work. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's very kind of you. Rottweilers. Rottweilers.
Puppies.
I had a good friend that had 2 or 3 of those,
Yes,
man.
you do. All right. And we've got
Real Pocahontas, $5. Sending love from Grand Junction, Colorado. You're the best. Couple goes for sure. Thank you for all you do. Absolutely. Appreciate that. Appreciate your support.
Ruckus is in the house.
Hello, Ruckus. I was on your show just shortly, just a little bit ago, or I was in the chat.
He was fine. All right. You ready for your questions?
Sure.
And from Wanda, what time did DoorDash deliver?
It's right there during just previous to the 4 o'clock window. It was 3 something. I didn't look at that. It's in the probable cause affidavit, but the time frame that I was focusing on for this was the 4 o'clock to the 4:25.
All right. And Michelle C. gifted a membership.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We appreciate all the support. We're going to be using a lot of that support next week. I go on the road on Monday, pick up Ruckus on Tuesday, and we've got a lot to do in Indiana and Iowa.
All right. And from Dave, also want to know whether the DD driver entered the house or not.
I don't know. Law enforcement knows that, and they would absolutely know that for sure, because that would be part of the interview process and would be critical. If he did enter, what did he see? Who was up? Who was moving around? Who wasn't? And and they would have done a interview of that process of what did you see outside? Anything suspicious? Dogs barking or any of that? And we just don't know that contents of that interview at this time. We'll know it at court.
Okay. I'm trying to play catch up here. All right. Oh my God. All right. And oh my goodness. All right. And 63 clocks.
You never disappoint, True Crime Web. Great work. Thank you. I appreciate that. Like I said, it is very nice of you and your support. Like I said, we'll put it to good use next week.
We sure will. And from Dave.
$4 super sticker. Thank you, Dave.
We appreciate that. And from Elizabeth.
Thank you both for everything you do. I'm learning how tough this is. Much respect to you both. It is something that, like I said, I would have never realized the sheath issue unless I did this time test. Doesn't mean that's what drove him to the point that the sheath wasn't attached. But it was something that I found out during this process, and it made sense that by the time you layer up, if you are having a knife that's attached to a belt, it's under the pants, which it may or may not be able to get across. And then, of course, your coat that cinches down. And there's a couple, 3 different types of coats. Some of them have the, what's that at the bottom with the pulls, where you can cinch the drawstrings. And with the drawstring at the bottom of the some of these coats, if that was something that he used to ensure that there would be minimal transfer of anything from him or contamination on him, then of course any knife worn sheath would almost be impossible to be part of that get up.
Alrighty, so hold on. I am slowly but surely catching up.
Yes. Now I saw where history underfoot says elastic bands. Yes, some of them are elastic. The one I used, I think, is elastic, but some of them, even with the elastic, it would have been difficult. But some of them have those pull drawstrings.
All right. And Luminous Grin. Did he not clean his car, and would that be sufficient to get everything?
it's extremely hard that once there's any type of blood transfer, can it be done? Yes. But if you go back and look at some of the Richard Allen videos I made, um, where I washed and scrubbed floor mats, um, even after they were, I did some uh, blood transfers or synthetic blood transfer. Blue lights on. Um,
Ain't no blue light.
uh, Even the synthetic blood transfers that I washed with just water, and then I washed some of them with detergents, scrubbed them. That still there was a clear and uh, transfer, and it's not that easy. That once blood's there, it's there. It's extremely difficult to get rid of, and that would work also for cloth or leather seats, and so it's not easy to clean a vehicle. Can it be done? I guess, but it would be extremely difficult. So I think that he would have layered up and also prepped his vehicle absolutely to minimize it. Um,
Okay. And Forensics 805. Hi, Steve. Just curious. We've heard talk about Kohberger entering from back slider, but not much on how he knew it would be unlocked on that night. Your thoughts, please?
I mean, he may have, been there before. He may have had confidence and had entered residence before through that type of door. Of all the, you know, these sliding glass doors, I don't know how many times I've worked burglaries where they were um, um, the points of entry. They're not known to be in the most highly secured locking system in the world. Some people have certain locks, and of course, you can buy those that go into the tracks and lock them absolutely. And if that had been the case on this, then that wouldn't have been a point of entry for him unless he broke it or was able to overcome such an obstacle. But I don't know if that is the absolutely point of entry or not, but it's more than likely it is because it is of all the locking systems, they're generally the weakest.
All right, let's see here. I think that one was good. All right, and Deb, how did use the shower curtain on him or on car seat?
Well, just simply draping the car seats with that or a tarp, that's only part of the issue. If you're contaminated with victims' DNA and blood profiles and transfers, every time that you touch any of your clothing that is contaminated and you're resaturating and you're transferring, you've got to worry about gear shifts. You've got to worry about um, any of your phones. You've got to worry about the steering wheel. You got to worry about door latches. You got to worry about pull handles. There's so many things that you have to worry about driving a vehicle, your seatbelt. And just think about it the next time you sit down in your vehicle and you drive for 10 minutes, look around and see what you adjusted and what you touched. And it takes a certain amount of discipline to limit those movements that you develop habits and of what you would do in normal driving. Now, after committing such a crime, an individual will be hyped up and he might, you know, be messing with the radio out of second nature, trying to find the news. He might be messing with a scanner for law enforcement. He might have on his phone or a burner phone or any type of device, whereas he can scan law enforcement to see if they're responding. There's a lot of things that can go on in these vehicles of you touching, throwing things across the vehicle, such as he still had to have a weapon. What weapon he had and went into the house with, and whatever clothing, if he did shed them and undress, did it? Was there other bags? Is there possibilities of cross-contamination on them. Absolutely. But there's a lot of things just in that driver's area that you can touch and cross-contaminate, and you have to realize that he would have to clean them and clean them pretty good unless they were prepped. And that's how long I'm going to go out and test and see how long it takes me to prep a vehicle, more so than just simply throwing a tarp over the seat, which is absolutely something that he could have done. But there is a certain risk in that, that if he does get stopped, that if you saw anybody with a blue or some type of tarp over their seats, law enforcement might find that highly suspicious.
All right, we got a couple blue lights here. We got Mike D.
Mike D, do you think he bagged shoes too and placed them to get in the car post-crime? Absolutely. I think he would have had. I just used one pair of shoes for this, but still I changed shoes, just flipped them on and off. But absolutely, I believe that he would have had another pair of shoes.
Okay. Now we've got Marty. Your Christina donated gifted a membership.
Thank you, Christina. Yeah.
And Sandra Oliver gifted a membership.
Appreciate y'all's support, guys. Means a lot to us.
And T-Bird.
$20. Thank you, T-Bird. I appreciate that support. We absolutely, like I said, we're about to go on the road, and I want to those of y'all that gift the memberships and things, those people absolutely, they're so appreciative of it during our memberships and everything. We thank y'all for that. Awesome.
All right. And from Wanda, could the car they are seeing in the camera video actually be the DD driver turning around and driving out of the neighborhood?
Is it possible? Anything is, but law enforcement would know. And will law enforcement make that statement? I don't know. But yes, it could be. I mean, that's a common vehicle. And it absolutely could be that he was still in the neighborhood during that time period and just had the off chance to be in a similar vehicle. But yes, I can't argue with that because I don't know what type of vehicle the DoorDash driver had.
Yeah. Okay. And let's see here. And from Megan, did BK have his entire head covered?
I don't know if he had his entire head covered. I chose to do that just for demonstration purposes. And that's where the natural drawstring, when I cinched up the when I cinched it up, that's where it just naturally went to. But if he did any type of preparation, I would expect that, you know, if he's trying to commit and you look at his survey, that he did pre-crime, are these some measures that he would have taken? I would believe so. But we have a witness that said that she saw his bushy eyebrows and he was wearing a mask. Doesn't mean that he had a hood on. He could have had simply a hair cover. Some people wear those that work in restaurants and cooking facilities and things. So that also is a possibility.
Okay. And from Kamala.
If there is a blood pool size of $50, how long does it take for outer ring to start drying? Just curious, blue lights, please.
Okay, you got another blue light. There you go.
Yes, there's certain things that start happening as soon as there's any type of blood stain exposed to air, and there's a chart out there. And actually, I've used that chart in my Indiana cold case just recently, and but there's drastic changing from what the darkening of a blood looks like when it starts drying and what happens at the outer edges and as it comes in to the center and dries out. And that takes typically for some of those blood stains to dry out 4 or 5 hours. But in the first minutes, it comes out dark and it goes to a lightening stage. It'll lighten up a little bit. And then, of course, then it starts drying and getting back into a far darker stain again because it's dried. And everyone has seen what dried blood looked like. And the synthetic blood does very similar. Um, but it would start drying on those outer edges. Probably it depends a lot about the humidity, air temp, and we're inside a house. I don't know what the air temp of the apartments were. Law enforcement would know. They would note that so that they would know exactly what the parameters are to look at and try to time some of that.
And from Kathy, wasn't BK studying criminal justice or criminal law in college? He'd likely have done some studying on trying to do this crime without a chance of being caught.
And I agree. And I think that's going to be a large part of the prosecution's argument and a presentation to the jury if it gets to trial, that they're going to be bringing that up. Because that's a must, especially if they're going after the DP and which they've made that apparent, then they're going to have to bring up that it was premeditated. Absolutely.
And from Christina, did you have this get up in Texas? Could you have gone under the house for sticks instead of Carolyn and Chris?
We would have had to enlarge that hole, so no.
That's a good one. All right. And from Megan, where would he have done this?
And that's what, from the time that he went off and he made that decision to turn off his phones at the 2:42 mark, and that hour and 18 minutes, wherever that travel time is. And I expect that as soon as he went off there, he probably drove to wherever that safe area is, and it's not going to be anywhere close. I don't think it would be close to where 242 is, but I do believe that it would be somewhere probably within 7 to 10 minutes of this, or 7 to 10 miles, and that he will prep the vehicle for the final drive of that 7 to 10 minutes of getting to the crime scene, committing the crime, getting back to that safe ground to reverse the process. And the reason I keep saying the 7 to 10 minutes, there's certain things, there's a timer in humans that I'm making a educated guess on, and I'm probably dead wrong. But when people commit certain crimes and they are transporting deceased victims, there's a timer that back in the day that they trained us, and they showed us that typically transporting individuals and the pressures of being with someone that is deceased is somewhere around 10 minutes. And I would think that prepping a vehicle to go and commit a crime, that if it's prepped and it's easily recognizable by anyone that would stop that vehicle, such as a law enforcement officer, if he saw certain measures taken inside that vehicle, an officer would recognize that. And then also after crime, that we have to get back to that safe ground relatively quick, get off the roads, and get everything cleaned up. And from the time that he went from the 425 to the 448 is only 23 minutes. And he went back on the air again. And so that equates into that 7 to 10 minute timeline, that we only got 23 minutes. And so I think that 7 to 10 minute timeline makes a lot of sense post crime, because it gives him time to get to his area, get everything stripped out of the vehicle, cleaned up, and probably could do that in probably 5 minutes, because it only took me a minute and a half to get out of my wardrobe. But also to strip the vehicle of everything, and then get in it and drive another 10 minutes away for that 23-minute post-crime driving experience that he did, or whoever committed this crime. It makes a lot of sense. It meets that 7 to 10 minute time frame. I'm speculating on that, but I'm doing it from my training.
All right, in history, underfoot, are any of those coveralls zippered? That might go even faster.
My rain suit was zippered and then had the snaps. I call them buttons. She calls them snaps. And so mine had dual layers.
Okay.
Now the Tyveks are just zippered.
All right, and from Phil, Steve, how many times have you seen a perpetrator protect his auto against DNA transfer?
I never. I've never seen it, and so I just didn't, work a case that had that premeditation involved. That from what we see in the probable cause affidavit of him, interactions of going there over multiple times over multiple months, but I never saw it.
All right, and from Miranda at True Crime Web, I just don't see how BK had time to remove his clothing after the
Homicides.
Before fleeing. Do you think he actually did that?
And that's how come I did this test, that he could be disrobing some of those outer layers as he was walking. It's 80 something feet. And so if he got out of the house and walking towards the vehicle, he could go ahead and start stripping off his jacket, even his face mask, first layer of gloves, and then simply get up to the car and have, he could probably, by the time he got to where the vehicle was at, and stripped off his pants, you're probably only looking at adding on 30 seconds or so of disrobing and changing shoes. So for there not to be anything in that vehicle, I believe that there were certain measures taken. And I wanted to do the time. And once I do the vehicle and I do the cleanup side of the vehicle, I'm going to have a better understanding of how long it would take. But you can watch the video and you'll see it only took me like a minute and a half to go to one location, strip everything off, and bag everything up. And so even that minute and a half, like I said, if I rushed it, I could probably get well under a minute.
All right. And from Mary, it was noted that the shower curtain was missing from BK's apartment. Could he have used that?
Yes. And I saw where some people said that it was part of the rental and stuff, that shower curtains were not part of the rental. And I don't know. I've never heard of that before, but I saw where that was mentioned in somebody's chat at some point. But absolutely,
shower curtain was not part of what?
Was part of the housing agreement, and that you had to provide your own sheets and shower curtain.
Apartment, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be your own.
Okay.
I think that's weird. Okay. All right. And from Nicole, was it ever confirmed that someone outside was unclothed? Could that have been him changing out of the clothes?
I had heard that, but I've never heard who that was and what that was based upon. So I have no idea.
Okay. And from 2 Cents, did he have direct accomplice? Indirect accomplice can't be argued.
There's anything's possible. But law enforcement, if has an accomplice, he has to build a relationship, and to build a relationship takes communications and interactions. And did he have those? And um, is he able to conceal all of those interactions and things? Um, we'll have to see about that. But right now, we don't have any indications that there's a accomplice.
Okay. 50. All right, a few more. And Purdue RN. Oh, Mrs. Steve, does Mr. Steve have permission to go on the bridge? Or don't ask, don't tell. LOL.
I've been out on the bridge now. She knows.
I know. Do I like it? Not really. Give Winston some sugars.
I will.
Not you, her.
Oh.
History. By prep vehicle, do you mean something like draping sheets with a tarp?
Not only that, but there's, like I said, every surface in that vehicle has the potential of being contaminated, cross-contaminated from DNA from the crime scene. And so it would be more than just prepping the seats. But yes, basically something like a waterproof tarp or water repellent tarp may have been used, but that's only one part of the vehicle. You still have doors, keys, everything, steering column, gear shifts, steering wheels. There's a lot of things that can be touched during a quick escape from a crime scene.
I'm not sure about that name. Wouldn't there be traces of blood leading away from the house back to his safe place?
Getting absolutely between the crime scene and the his vehicle, which he then used the vehicle to go to wherever the safe ground or the wherever he might do the cleanup follow up. But yes, you would expect that there would have been some, and we noted that there's some officers out looking at certain shoe prints in certain areas, and we don't know what exactly type of evidence was recovered from outside. But there could have been when Mrs. Steve did the walk with the synthetic blood transfers from the shoes. That was 160 something feet, I think. And so that was impressive. I didn't expect that to occur, but it did.
Okay. And Luminous, didn't he put out a survey asking for people who committed crimes?
Yes, and that it was part of the that drove me to look at this. Is this something that he would have done, run and dressed and prepped a vehicle and prepped himself? Very possible, because the survey could have been, he's trying to learn how to commit what a lot of people have said the perfect crime, which of course it didn't turn out to be that. But, and, of course, Kohberger has been charged with a crime, and people say, well, he did a lot of foolish things. But we're also talking about an individual that was highly intelligent in certain areas and on certain levels. Even highly intelligent people do stupid things at times, and they make mistakes also. And so there's just by being highly intelligent doesn't mean that you won't make mistakes.
Obviously. All right. That was your last question.
All right. But anyway, like I said, we just wanted to do this part tonight, and tomorrow we got to get in our matching Tyvek suits and matching. Took her clothes shopping. Never happy. Never happy. But anyway, we appreciate everybody for being here tonight. Appreciate all the support, and we've got next week. got a really busy week, and I'm doing a lot of prepping for the trip. We'll have one part of the show that will for Saturday night. We'll be addressing some of the bloodstain transfers.
You got blue light for Debbie.
Law enforcement confirmed that that the survey never went public. I don't know. I hadn't seen that. Yeah. I thought it was on Reddit.
I did too.
Yeah. And if it wasn't on Reddit, I don't know. But anyway, I appreciate that. Thank you for your support. Anyway, like I said, we'll have some more of this for Saturday night. Some of the interactions of Mrs. Steve being the victim, portraying the victim, and seeing how some of the bloodstain transfers can occur, and what type of stains those are, and what it looks like on dark clothing, and if there's any transfer as far as staining through this outer layer onto the inner layer. I'm extremely interested in finding out. But we thank everybody for being here tonight. Y'all stay safe, and I will see y'all Saturday night.
Thank you, mods.
Bye-bye.
Oh, and check the blog tomorrow at some point.
Okay.
A little change up.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Love you.
Bye-bye.